Alright, so once you're ready to submit your geofilter, you can go to snapchat.com/geofilters, and you should be brought to this page where you can then choose from two options, community and on demand. And for this, we're going to choose community. But before we go ahead and submit our geofilter, it's best to have some submission notes ready. And to give you an idea of what that looks like, I'll show you what I have written out already. Throughout this submission process, I'm going to be using a geofilter that I've already submitted before, and these are the submission notes that went along with it that ended up getting accepted. So you can take a look at the details of this whole submission note in the transcript below, but you want to answer the two questions that are going to be meaningful for this submission process. The first question is, why is this location meaningful to you? And just go into detail about why the geofilter is important to the location, why is the location meaningful to you, and how does the geofilter relate back to that location. Just give a lot of detail so the person reviewing your geofilter is not confused and is more likely to accept your geofilter because it will make sense. And second is, it's not really a question, but any additional notes that may not be about the location specifically, but you may want to let them know. If you don't have anything to say, I usually like to say thank you for reviewing my geofilter. So once you have your geofilter submission notes typed out and ready to go, we can then go ahead and submit the geofilter. So go ahead and click Community. So now you'll be brought to the geofilter tips page, and this will just run through some of the basics of what you need to have in your geofilter in order to get accepted. And at the bottom, you also have a link to the complete submission guidelines that you should follow when submitting your geofilter that we talked about in earlier lessons. Now you could see in the top right corner that there's the templates for a Photoshop file as well as an Illustrator file in order to have the correct dimensions. So once you have everything and you've read through the guidelines to make sure that it's good, you can then hit Next. Then you may be asked whether you want to allow Snapchat to use your current location, and this is just your personal preference. I've usually selected Don't Allow, and it's worked just fine for me. Then in the top left corner, you could then search your location by name or by address. Then hit Enter, and you should be brought to the location, and you could zoom in and out with the plus and minus buttons right next to the search bar. Once you have a good overview of your location, then you could go over to the right side of the screen and click on the box that says Upload Geofilter Asset. Then find your geofilter. And once you have your geofilter uploaded, you could then go ahead and start drawing the geofence for your geofilter. And once you have the location on screen, you could then just draw a boundary by clicking points at every change in direction in order to create a boundary or a box that surrounds your location. And you just do that at every change in direction in order to create a point and just surround the whole location that you want. And then you can complete it by clicking on the first point that you created. And then you should have a green area, but if for some reason you self-intersected the box, then it's probably going to show up red. So you could fix that by just clicking and dragging on points. And if you have too many points, like say over here, you could just right click on the point and it will be deleted. Same, or if you want to add points, there's these little grayed out points that you could then click on, or if you don't want that, you could then just right click. And if you just want to reset the whole fence, you can go up here at the top and click Reset Fence. And if you end up resetting your fence, you could then just go ahead and click at every change in direction in order to create a point, and do that until you have a boundary around the area that you actually want, and then go all the way back to the original point and click it in order to complete the boundary. Again, make sure to just spend some time on this geofence because it is one of the most important aspects as far as submitting your geofilter and getting it accepted. So it must be relevant to the area, so try not to include too much of the surrounding areas that may not be as relevant and could possibly get your geofilter rejected. So I'm feeling pretty good about this geofence because my geofence is Sac State and this is surrounding the whole campus. So it feels very relevant and I'm ready to submit it. So let's go over to the right side of the screen where we'll fill out the rest of the information as well as our submission notes. So the first thing you'll do is just type in your name, then type in your email address, and then we'll go over to our submission notes, and then we'll just copy the section that says, why is this location meaningful to you? And then we'll just paste it in there. And then we could just copy the additional notes and then paste it underneath that. And then once you're done with that, you could select I am not a robot. And then just agree that all the content that you're submitting is original artwork and doesn't contain any logos or trademarks. And also that you follow the privacy policy and submission agreement of the Snapchat Geofilter tool. And if you're ready, just double check and then you could hit submit. Or if your geofilter happens to be of an event, you can click this button that says click here for event geofilters. And then you could select your time zone, the start time and the end date for your geofilter, and that will be submitted as an event geofilter, so it will have an expiration date on it. I will cancel that though, and I'm not going to submit it because I've already submitted this geofilter, but I'm going to give you an idea of what the email is going to look like after you submit it. So I'm going to go over the email real quick. Now once you submit your geofilter, you'll then receive an email that says geofilter submission successful, and it should look like this. It's essentially going to be a recap of what you submitted, as well as just letting you know that your geofilter will be reviewed in the order that it was received, and they will notify you once it's been approved and activated. And once it's been reviewed and activated, you should then receive the following email. And then you should receive this email that says geofilter activated, as well as just saying congratulations and just letting you know that it will be live in the next few hours, or if yours was an event, it will go live during the requested dates and times. And it will also just give you a recap of the description and the submission notes that you submitted. Now, as far as a time frame for when you can expect your geofilter to be reviewed, it really depends and it can vary from geofilter to geofilter. But to give you an example, my first two geofilters that were submitted in 2015 were reviewed and accepted in just a few days. For example, my Hanford geofilter was reviewed in 3 days, and the Sac State geofilter that I'm showing you right now was reviewed in 2 days. However, that was when geofilters were just a few months old as far as being open to the public, and now almost over a year later, I submitted another geofilter for Purdue University that took almost 5 weeks to be reviewed. But also something to keep in mind is that geofilter was submitted during a busy time for geofilters because on-demand geofilters were just released, and it was towards the end of a school year, which was really busy as far as graduations and a lot of other things that probably put a lot more stress on the geofilter team as far as getting them reviewed in time. So that could have been part of that reason, and that's just another reason why it really depends on your geofilter and when you're submitting it as well. Lastly, if you're submitting community geofilters outside of the United States, then it may take a little bit longer for yours to be reviewed just because Snapchat has said that they are currently prioritizing US-based geofilters at the moment. So hopefully that gives you a better idea of what you can expect as far as the time frame for your geofilter submission. However, to keep in mind that this is an ever-evolving process, and this is likely to change in the future as Snapchat expands their geofilter offerings as well as their product and their team. So now in the next lesson, we're going to cover how you can submit an on-demand geofilter.